Billions of dollars, thousands of tons of concrete, and the most advanced supercomputing systems in the world. All of it was just defeated by exactly 11 rodents. In 2009, the Scottish government released 11 beavers into a river that was slowly dying, with no engineers involved and no public budget being spent. After only 5 short years, they had built a massive network of dams all by themselves, cutting flood peaks by as much as 60%, holding back 24 million liters of water, and automatically filtering chemical toxins. The brightest human minds could only stare in astonishment at a structure made of mud and branches. For centuries, humanity built enormous concrete walls to control the flow of water. But these 11 beavers proved that all of that engineering theory had failed in the face of nature's laws. So what exactly happened when this ecological experiment, one of the boldest in history, began? By 1900, not a single beaver was left in Scotland. In fact, across Europe and Asia, a species that had once numbered in the hundreds of millions had been hunted down until only around 100 remained. They were driven to the edge of extinction for 3 things: their warm fur, their meat, and castoreum, a substance secreted by the beaver's scent glands that was once highly prized by perfume makers and medicine producers, with a value close to that of gold. By the end of the 15th century, the last beaver in Scotland had disappeared completely. Their 4-century absence did not simply mean the loss of one animal species, it meant the collapse of an entire hydrological system across a vast region. Without beaver dams to hold them back, streams lost their natural ability to wind and bend. They turned into straight, violent, fast-moving channels. When heavy rain fell, nothing was left to slow them down. Water thundered downstream at full speed, breaking riverbanks, sweeping away millions of tons of fertile soil, and drowning villages under floodwater. On the other hand, when drought arrived, the land cracked open within just a few weeks. Vast wetlands that had once acted like giant sponges of the earth dried out completely. Thousands of species of birds, fish, and insects disappeared along with them. Human engineers tried to intervene by building concrete levees and dredging channels deeper and deeper. Billions of dollars were poured in, yet the flooding only kept getting worse. We made a catastrophic mistake. Humanity tried to control water when what water really needed was to be slowed down. That truth only became clear when 11 beavers from Norway set foot in the Knapdale forest. In May of 2009, the Scottish government finally gave in to pressure from scientists. It allowed the first mammal reintroduction in the region's history. 11 beavers from Norway were released into a forest area covering 44 square kilometers in Knapdale. But this was not a symbolic gesture. It was a giant biological laboratory with an unprecedented level of monitoring. If these beavers damaged farmland, flooded roads, or reduced fish populations, the government would immediately order them removed or relocated. Hydrologists from several prestigious universities covered the forest with flow meters, water pressure sensors, infrared trail cameras, and chemical analysis equipment. Every branch that got chewed, every puddle that rose in level, was recorded as real-time data. On the very first night, under a light rain, the beavers got to work. An instinct encoded in their DNA over millions of years was triggered by one thing only: the sound of rushing water. Anywhere they hear water flowing hard, beavers interpret it as a structural breach that needs to be sealed. They cut down young trees with their extraordinarily powerful jaws. They dragged branches into the stream and packed mud and stones into the gaps. No blueprints, no planning meetings, no excavators. They worked in silence all night long. In just 1 year, a single straight stream had been transformed into a complex maze of dozens of dams, ponds, and interwoven channels. But just as the first pools began to spread, an enormous danger appeared, a crisis that could have caused the entire project to be shut down forever. The biggest threat to the beaver project had a name: Atlantic salmon. This fish species is a vital economic and ecological backbone of the region. Adult salmon have to swim upstream in order to spawn. Right away, the authorities and the fishermen raised one decisive question: how could a salmon get past a wall of branches and mud that stood more than 1 meter high? If beaver dams blocked the breeding route of salmon, this project would become a disaster. But the data that came in caused a major shock. Beaver dams are not fully sealed concrete walls. They are porous and let water pass through. During the migration season, heavy rains raise the water level, causing it to spill over the top of the dam and create natural water steps that allow adult salmon to jump across fairly easily. What was truly astonishing was what happened to the young salmon. Underwater cameras and field observations revealed that the calm ponds behind beaver dams had become the most perfect nursery environment on the planet for young fish. Instead of being swept away by fast currents or exhausted by fighting against them, juvenile salmon had deep, nutrient-rich, sheltered pools where they could grow. The size and survival rate of young salmon in areas with beavers shot upward dramatically. It turned out that the real thing harming salmon had been the absence of beavers over the last 400 years. But that still was not all. The chemical analysis teams reported another strange phenomenon. The water flowing out of beaver dams was far cleaner than the water flowing in. The ponds created by beavers function like a gigantic biological filtration system. As the speed of the water slows down, sediment, nitrate, and phosphorus from agricultural fertilizers settle to the bottom of the pond instead of washing straight out to sea. Bacteria living in that muddy layer break down toxic chemical compounds. Later, water quality reports published numbers that were hard to believe. The concentration of toxic nitrate from agricultural fertilizers dropped by as much as 40%, while phosphorus fell by nearly 50% when the water passed through the beaver dam system. An artificial wastewater treatment plant with an equivalent capacity would cost the government at least $5 million in construction expenses and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to operate. Meanwhile, the beavers do it completely free, asking only for a few willow branches in return. By the 5th year of the experiment, scientists at the University of Exeter decided to compare the real data with the most advanced computerized flood prediction models. The results forced engineers to completely rewrite the textbooks. When a major storm hit the area, instead of a huge mass of water rushing all at once into the lower river and creating a devastating flood peak, the linked chain of beaver dams broke apart that destructive force. Water spilled over the first dam and lost 10% of its energy. It passed the second dam and lost another 15%. By the time it had moved through a chain of 10 dams, the flood peak had been reduced by as much as 60%. The violent flow was almost completely neutralized. Drone images showed that in just one small area, beaver dams held back up to 24 million liters of floodwater. That water was pushed out across both sides of the riverbank and soaked deep into the ground, recharging underground aquifers that had been depleted for generations. And here is the newest information that has forced the world to change the way it sees this animal: its ability to withstand wildfires and store carbon. During periods of extreme heat and the wildfires that tore across entire continents, satellite cameras captured a stunning image. In the middle of tens of thousands of hectares of forest burned into ash, the wetlands shaped by beavers remained green and cool, forming emerald-colored refuges. Dr. Emily Fairfax, a leading ecological hydrologist, published satellite images from some of the most devastating wildfires in North America. The results were extraordinary. While high-temperature flames reduced everything else to white ash, areas with beaver dams created a safety cushion where the vegetation survival rate reached as high as 80%. These emerald oases did not just slow the spread of fire, they also became safe shelters for thousands of wild animals, from deer to rare birds fleeing the flames. Their ability to store groundwater is so powerful that even during the worst recorded droughts, these wetlands still hold abundant water and refuse to surrender to extreme climate conditions. At the same time, the flooded mud layer behind beaver dams stores an enormous amount of carbon. Rotten wood, roots, and fallen leaves that remain submerged do not break down into carbon dioxide. Instead, they become trapped in the muddy bottom. Without even intending to, beavers have become one of the sharpest weapons in the fight against climate change. The irony reaches its peak when people run the economic numbers for building an artificial reservoir with flood reduction capacity equal to that of a beaver population. The government would have to spend tens of millions of dollars on concrete, steel, land acquisition, and yearly maintenance. Concrete eventually cracks and breaks with time. Meanwhile, the beaver system can repair itself completely. When a storm wipes out a dam, Just 3 days later, the beaver colony has already finished building a new one that is even stronger, with a maintenance cost of zero. The data does not lie. In November of 2016, the Scottish government officially declared that beavers would be allowed to stay forever. The Knapdale experiment had been a massive success, but nature always works in its own way, far beyond the borders human beings draw on maps. While scientists were busy monitoring the 11 beavers in the test zone, something unthinkable happened on the other side of the country. Beavers that had escaped from zoos and reproduced on their own, or had been secretly released by environmental activists, quietly established new populations in the Tayside region. The data from the broader study left the authorities stunned. From around 150 individuals in 2012, the population of this species grew exponentially. By the year 2026, that population had exploded far beyond the threshold of 2,500 individuals, occupying and reshaping hundreds of kilometers of river networks. In May of 2019, Parliament officially passed a law making the beaver a strictly protected species, placing it on the same level as dolphins and eagles. Anyone who hunts them or destroys their dams without permission will face severe legal penalties. This revolution did not stop at Scotland's border. The truth about the beaver's abilities triggered a global wave. Many countries began launching beaver release campaigns. The United Kingdom recently announced that it will allow the release of wild beavers across the entire country. Scotland's model has ignited a worldwide ecological race. In dry American states like California and Utah, authorities are using helicopters to drop beavers into remote areas in order to fight extreme drought. In Bavaria, Germany, the presence of beavers has already saved towns millions of euros in flood cleanup costs. To solve conflicts with farmers whose land gets flooded, modern engineers are no longer trying to eliminate beavers. Instead, they invented devices called beaver deceivers, underground plastic pipe systems precisely designed to fool a beaver's hearing and allow water to drain quietly out of a dam without triggering its building instinct. For the first time in history, human technology is being used to cooperate with this species instead of wiping it out. Of course, this population boom comes with costs. Farmland in low-lying areas along riverbanks has been flooded. Some farmers are furious when they see their apple trees chewed through and knocked down. Compensation programs have been put in place, and the government is spending millions of dollars to install flow regulation devices. It is a complicated arrangement, but it is one worth making in order to save the future of water. After 400 years of arrogantly believing that we could dominate nature with mechanical force and reinforced concrete, humanity has finally admitted its limits. The greatest lesson from releasing 11 beavers into a dying river is not really about dam building techniques. It is a lesson in humility. We discovered that sometimes the greatest engineering has nothing to do with human engineers at all. A complex system capable of self-repair, wildfire resistance, water filtration, and flood control in the most perfect way had already been designed by a biological structure millions of years ago. We do not need to build taller walls. We simply need to step back, give space back, and allow the true architects of the earth to return and do their work. So tell me, if the place where you live had to face frequent flooding, would you put your trust in a multi-billion-dollar concrete levee project built by humans, or in a population of beavers working silently through the night? Leave your opinion in the comment section below this video so we can talk about it together. And do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the most powerful stories about how nature is reshaping the world. See you next time.